Time is constantly unfolding. Will we create and evolve? We must innovate now so we can leave the world better than we found it. I am your host, Sohrab Mirmont, and welcome to AVANT-SAVANT.
This is episode 1, and we have a very special guest in the studio today. He started as a Mormon missionary who became a Cambodian rockstar. That's him singing. They even had their own show on Cambodian television. And now he has a viral video-making machine, making advertisements for companies like Chatbooks, Clash of Clans, Purple, Mobile Strike, Oracle, and Vivint. His work has been seen by hundreds of millions of people worldwide. He's won 3 Student Emmys and been nominated for a Student Oscar. We talk about his career and what makes him him, including meditation practices with sensory deprivation tanks and the benefits of cold showers. So join us for a conversation with A. Todd Smith.
What I do remember from being a kid, really young, is watching like old Spielberg movies on VHS, like E.T., and I feel like some of them, either that or they were on TV, I would see little behind-the-scenes featurettes. And I remember watching like Spielberg do his thing and just going, as a young kid, I don't even remember how old I was, just going, that's what I want to do. I don't understand what he's doing, but just that feeling of like, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be Spielberg. I suppose what surprised me over the years is that it's remained. And then I decided I wanted to do the film thing. I wasn't sure exactly where. I started to do it while I was on the music scholarship at UVSC at the time, and was loving it over there. But at the time, Napoleon Dynamite had just recently come out, and Napoleon Dynamite had come out of Jared and Jerusha Hess, who made that film, came out of BYU. And so I decided, well, maybe that's the place to be. I had heard from filmmakers and some relatives that are in the film business that, it's all about networking. So I decided, if I'm going to do the school thing for film, it should be solely to network. And since BYU at the time was such a hot place to be, it was a great place to network, I decided to go over there. Even as a kid, I would think about the filmmaking process. I would ask myself, how are these images being made? Quite a bit, like so much that I just even without understanding the filmmaking process really early on, I would pull myself out of the movie-going experience because I was thinking about how things were being made so often, if that makes sense.
And I guess, what was the first time you picked up a camera and directed people to do something for you?
In high school, I was in a ska punk band and played my trumpet in a punk band. And I was hanging out in school with all the punk rockers and the trench coat mafia folks. A lot of the people that people were afraid of. But I discovered that these people were just amazing, really cool individuals, and made really good friends with the punk rockers. And then I joined a punk band and played my trumpet in the punk band. And we decided one day to make a music video. And so my very first thing, I suppose, was I bought a digital, a mini DV camcorder, and we shot a music video. And I edited it on one of the very first versions of Premiere. And it was my first time ever editing anything.
I want to talk about you as a rock star in Cambodia. Tell us, how the heck did that happen?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was something. It became an important moment in my life because I learned a very important lesson about it. But first, the brief story about how it happened. And my history in Cambodia was that I've done a lot of humanitarian service there. I initially served some time for my church, or the church I went to at the time. No longer necessarily subscribed to that anymore, or just really any religion, but it got me out there and it got me learning the language. And I spent a couple of years there, learned the language, served a lot of time just trying to help the country, do something good for the people out there. And I caught the kind of Cambodian bug from that. At that point, I just fell in love with the culture, the people, the language, and decided that I wanted to just keep going back. So I came back and started university from, after I initially went there. But every summer I would go back to Cambodia and would typically either volunteer at some kind of an orphanage or some kind of organization where I could help out. I even did a lot of translating for Red Cross, the companies that go out there and do the cleft palate surgeries and that kind of thing. I decided that I wanted to make some form of a documentary with a couple of buddies who also had spent a lot of time in Cambodia and also spoke the language. So it was a bunch of my fellow friends who were getting into the film department at the same time that I was, and we decided it just made sense to go back to Cambodia and make a documentary. But we went back one summer first to try to find a story, and that's kind of where all this started, because we were volunteering at an orphanage, and one of my buddies, he plays guitar and he sings pretty well, and so we would actually do like he and I and the guys, we would put together these little Cambodian songs that were just pop songs, popular songs at the time, and sing them for all these orphan kids, and they loved it. I mean, it's just like they got the biggest kick out of it, and and that just makes you feel, it's just a good time. It just makes you feel good just to like watch people laugh and sing and think it's the craziest thing that you're singing in their language, nonetheless speaking in it. And so we decided to create a fake boy band of sorts, and it wasn't really a thing, but it became something because in between one of those summers we decided, we went back to school after the summer, and we're preparing to shoot a documentary, and I decided to let's just see what happens if I email like one of the biggest TV stations and tell them that we have a band. And we didn't actually have a band. but I was like, so I emailed this producer that was the manager of this TV station. I told them that, hey, we're a bunch of white dudes that sing Cambodian, people love it, and we have a band, and we're a thing. And he emailed me back really quick. It surprised me. I honestly didn't think I'd get a response back. But he emailed me back and he's like, hey, this sounds awesome. Can you send me a video you guys performing? And we're like, oh, crap. But yeah, I grabbed, we got into a stage at school. We we borrowed a bunch of cameras, and we shot little pieces of this song that we couldn't play all the way through. And but what I ended up doing is I ended up cutting it together so it seemed like one cohesive long piece, and I put a fake audience track underneath the whole thing and threw that up on YouTube. And then Cambodians started discovering it and going crazy over it. And then I got a phone call from this producer who was just freaking out and going, we want you guys out here. We want to put you on our biggest TV show, most popular program. It runs Saturday night live in front of the entire country. And he's like, can you play like 6 songs for us? and so I had to kind of break it to him that I was like, we're really busy preparing this documentary, and or we're kind of a band. It's like, but we could probably pull together 3 songs. So that's what we did. We ended up pulling together 3 songs and playing them live pretty terribly in front of the entire country. And I took my trumpet along, and that was kind of a novelty thing because trumpet playing just isn't a huge thing over in that country, especially after the genocide that happened over there. And the whole thing just blew up. We kept getting flown back out there to play and sing on either TV. We had our own TV show where we were talking and presenting music videos to the whole country. A variety of music videos, either local music videos that we thought were cool or international music videos. And the show was called Barang Barang, which is translates to basically means Frenchy. It's like the derogatory white boy term.
This thing's still online?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, if you search for Muck, M-U-K, you'll find a bunch of those videos. It's crazy. Which stands for octopus, and there's no logical reason why we named our band Muck, other than it just sounded funny. What we didn't realize is we started getting all these comments from Cambodian Americans who were reconnecting with their roots and sending us these long, thankful messages about how our dedication to the language and to the country and the culture inspired them to go back or even move back in some cases and either get into humanitarian service or just try to make a change for the country. And so that became an outcome that we just like did not see coming whatsoever, and we're just stoked about. But it was also a lesson in just like cold emailing some producer.
That brings me to something else, which I think perhaps began your commercial filmmaking career, but you basically did a cold email on LinkedIn. Is that how you got your first client?
I ended up going to Cambodia. I shot another feature-length documentary. That documentary is called Still I Strive. I think it's on Hulu or Amazon Prime. Just a little tiny film about some orphan kids that we got connected to. That really cool. It was an amazing, incredible experience, the whole thing. But I did that, and then I got home and kind of took my student film around to various film festivals. But I still had these buddies that were like, you should do something on YouTube. And so I decided, okay, let's launch this YouTube channel. And also at the time, I got connected to a local production company who asked me to direct one of their feature films. So that was my first like feature film I made with a company called Aerostorm. And the reason I mentioned that film is because we had this idea to start a YouTube channel, and it's like we should start this channel. It was me and this producer buddy that I worked with a lot, and we decided let's start a YouTube channel. What should we make it about? And we realized like the gaming audience, Devin Graham, people like him. He realized that too. I mean, like he's got plenty of gaming kind of fan content out there, but that stuff kills it, on YouTube. It finds an audience because you're tapping into an existing IP, and at the time we were all just playing for fun a game called Clash of Clans, which was just like an iOS game at the time, and we're just loving it. And we were this producer I was working with, we realized like, oh, nobody's made a Clash of Clans video. Let's do a Clash of Clans video. And we're like, yeah, that'd be a great way to launch the channel, especially since I'd made these fantasy feature films. But anyway, we're also kind of like, well, this is a fantasy thing. Like it'd be a really hard thing to just kind of bankroll and make for fun by yourself. So that's when the LinkedIn thing came in, and that's when we registered for like a pro LinkedIn account, and contacted the marketing. Whatever the job title is, CEO of marketing or, head marketer man. We found him on LinkedIn for this company called Supercell, and they're the creators of the game. They had a branch. I mean, they were from Norway, I think is where the company's from, and but they had a branch in San Francisco. So we contacted that guy that's in San Francisco, and we're like, hey, we're launching a YouTube channel, and we want to launch it with the Clash of Clans video. And we were like, we basically just told them we're gonna make this, kind of no matter what. We're just wondering if you guys want to get involved. But this is how we're launching our channel. And what I ended up doing is sending them a reel, like one of Aerostorm Entertainment's reels, those fantasy projects that I made.
Yep.
Just to show them, like, we've made stuff in this world, in the fantasy world, which is, that's what Clash of Clans is. It's a really cartoony fantasy world. And so I sent them the reel. We got it was like the Cambodia thing. We got a response back, and we're like, holy crap, they responded. We got a response that was like, we'd love to talk. We're in San Francisco. Do you guys happen to be around here at any point? And we immediately responded back, oh yeah, we happen to be there next weekend.
And were you going to be?
Oh no. And so we set up a meeting with them, and they're like, oh, perfect, that sounds great. And so me and my producer friend and our wives hopped in a car and drove to San Francisco, the 10, 12 hours it takes to get up there, and had a meeting with Supercell and pitched them our idea. And that was like my first pitching a client kind of experience. But it was a slow burn at first. We were a little bit nervous because it was just like 10,000 views, 11,000 views, and then all of a sudden 50,000 views, and then all of a sudden 100, and all of a sudden like we hit 1 million, and we thought that was a big deal. And then it just like kept going from there, but pretty slowly. And then, at one point, I think it was the first, it was like the holiday season after we'd released the video. For some reason, it caught on fire. And basically what me and this producer partner decided to do was any revenue that was coming in from that video, we would dump back into the channel. It wouldn't go into our pockets. We were doing, client work on the side there to pay the bills. And we just decided we want to, turn this into a cool channel and keep it growing. So we bought a Red, with the revenue that was coming in. And then, when more money would come in, we'd put it to to another little side video. Sorry, drink of water real quick here. Where that video went right. I mean, you can check out that Clash of Clans video, and I haven't looked at it recently, but it's got over 50 million views.
Wow.
And but it's not like the greatest video. I mean, especially if you've never played Clash of Clans. But I think it's taken me a while to figure out for some reason just that that is also its strength, because we pitched them, like I mentioned earlier, we pitched them that we wanted to make something that that had a whole bunch of inside jokes that just really appealed to the people playing the game. And we made fun of glitches in the game. For example, if you put a soldier out to go attack a base, you'll have one or two stragglers that just sit there hitting a wall for no apparent reason. It's just it's a funny glitch. So we put that glitch into the video, and it's just a joke in the video, which you would not understand whatsoever unless you've played the game. And then turns out that I think is a very real strength of the video, because it just, people that have played the game, they share it with other people that are playing the game. And, so we learned really quickly, this is the power of tapping into a target demographic, which for us was people that play Clash of Clans. It wasn't, and the thing is, a brand would be nervous about this, but they want to attract new users, right? And they want to attract new people to come into the game and spend money in their game. We wanted to make a video that was for the people playing the game, which I think is important, and that's actually something that's bled into my commercial career quite a bit, and with things that's what Chatbooks does really well, is it taps into a very specific target demographic and taps into the relatability factor of that demographic that appeals to them in a personal and real way. What happened with me at the time then was that I got offered another documentary because I'd finished school. I made a documentary. First I finished school with a short film, with a thesis film, and took that to festivals. Then I made the documentary. And then I made the feature film after that, and then I got contacted by the guy that I made the first documentary for, who wanted to make another one, and he offered me really good money. So I just I left that YouTube world for a little bit to go make this documentary
in Cambodia again, correct, or no?
No, it was the same investor that funded the Cambodian film, but he wanted the Cambodia documentary, but he wanted to do something more scientific, kind of talking headsy. Traveling around to other places in the world, Italy and Hawaii and Korea, and just kind of all over the place. But yeah, totally different subject.
Your thesis film, real quick, correct me if I'm wrong, Student Emmy, or? Yeah.
So it got 3 Student Emmys, nominated for a Student Oscar, which was really cool. It was a cool experience right out of the gate. I mean, it was a very important movie for that reason, just for straight up for a little bit of validation, right out of school.
Absolutely.
I remember the Student Emmy celebration thing that I won the best director award, and then it won the first place comedy, I think it was. But for the director award, I remember Sandra Oh of Grey's Anatomy, and the director of Grey's Anatomy presented the award for me, and I got to talk with them after, and it was just really cool. They'd watched the movie.
That's amazing.
They were instructed to watch the movie.
They had no choice, but they loved it.
Yeah, and to give feedback on it, Oh. What I remember from them specifically was it's just so experimental and so. It's not that experimental of a film, but I understand that why they were saying that now, after kind of knowing kind of how TV world works. But they gave me a lot of encouragement as a young filmmaker, and that whole program, that whole award ceremony, when I got up on stage, that's the first thing that came to mind was okay, cool, I can do this. You know, like this is kind of what I need, like right out of school to know that like I can direct and I can do this. You know, like.
So since I've known you, you've gone through a lot of changes. Most noticeably, physically losing 50 pounds. I know you're still, you're
Still
engaged
working
in,
at it, yeah.
still working at it. You're engaged in jujitsu.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're a very active individual. So I wonder when you decided to make the shift and basically change your life.
I mean, a lot of that has to do with like listening to things like this, to be honest, like listening to stories, listening to successes, various podcasts. I think it actually kind of stems from that second documentary that I got asked to make, which is a very scientific documentary. It was about a very big subject, which was about the human connection to nature. If that makes sense.
Beautiful, yes.
It's a big, massive
Huge.
subject. And then what we ended up kind of a little bit narrowing down on was microbes and the microbiome and how that functions in our, like how microbes specifically connect us to the earth and to nature.
Incredible.
And we got, when it comes to documentary, you're getting paid to do tons and tons of research. So I mean, like that's the first couple of months of that project was just research, and hanging out with a lot of scientists. And so I think that was my first. That's when I was weighing in at like in the 260s. Well, I got into martial arts while I was in college, but and jiu-jitsu in particular. But I was mostly using it as a form of therapy. I just realized that. And we can kind of I suppose we can get into why later, because when we start talking about the why.
Indeed.
But it became therapy for me, and so exercise has always kind of been a part of my life, but mostly for the endorphins, for just the sake of like feeling good, But then making this documentary made me realize how much like diet is such an important piece of that, and how diet is such a what we put in our bodies is such an important part of how we feel, how we function, and there's reasons for that. Nutrition is kind of such a if you think about it, it's such a young, early scientific field, that's not been around that long.
Indeed.
It's especially just in terms of like the human history, kind of thing. So it's a constantly evolving field of science that I find so fascinating, and I find it fascinating mostly because of this documentary. Where I was hanging out with all these scientists and kind of learning about these things and learning about microbes and how all that works. But
how did that improve your relationship with nature?
To the point where like once a week I go jogging with my 2 kids down to Utah Lake. When I get to Utah Lake, I take off my shoes and dig my feet in the dirt to connect my skin with the microbes of the earth. It all sounds kind of hippy dippy, but there's actual like scientific evidence on the benefits of all that.
Absolutely, yeah. Recently, I read that the earth has a certain frequency that it is always operating at, and our bodies are like always trying to find the same frequency as the earth, but we don't necessarily help it along the way. But I think doing things like that, like, taking your shoes off and connecting with the earth.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. And raising kids, I've just definitely learned from that documentary. It's like, if they want to eat dirt and get into dirt, let them do it. Like, it's only good for your immune system and for the necessary microbes that everybody needs. That making that documentary got me thinking a lot. I guess it made me start to become a much more logical thinker. Thinking about the scientific method more in how I just live my life. Both in the film world and just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even. I heard about Headspace, and Headspace kind of got me into meditation a little bit. I heard about Headspace from a podcast. I think it was Russell Brand's podcast. He interviewed the guy that started Headspace, and they did the podcast in the Headspace studio. And it's super super cool.
What is Headspace?
And Headspace is it's an app that helps you with some guided meditation. It's a nice quick little introduction to meditation. Some of it's guided more than others, but they've got a tons and tons and tons of different kinds of programs. Guided meditation that'll help you sleep, guided meditation that'll help you focus. And you pay like one subscription fee and you get access to all these, guided meditations. And then, and that's what started getting me into it. I looked a little bit into, what is it called? I'm trying to remember. Katy Perry's huge on this type of meditation.
Transcendental?
Yep. Yeah, and I went and did the introductory class for the transcendental meditation, and which I found very fascinating. I'd actually still like to look into it a little bit more, because they try to bring in the science into the meditation world a little bit. A lot of studies have gone into it, and a lot of the benefits have started to be studied more on a scientific level. So it's like looking at it from that perspective, I think attracts a certain crowd, me being one of them, but, I remember asking the instructor in this introductory class, I was like, well, do you do any other forms of meditation? And if so, why or why not? And he stopped and was like, it's a good question. I mean, I haven't needed to do any other types of meditation. There is no other type of meditation. This is it. He became all of a sudden a bit of an evangelist for
very defensive. Yes.
For his meditation, and my days in Mormonism kind of went off in my mind a little bit and kind of went
red flag.
Yeah. And it turned me off a little bit because it started to sound like the one true church talk, and so I got a little bit cold feet. But then I found Headspace, and which got me more into meditation. But then that led to, of course, like I mentioned, podcast before being a big part of just trying to educate myself. Listening to Joe Rogan's podcast years and years ago kind of got me into being interested in isolation tanks, sensory deprivation tanks. So I've been getting more and more into that. That's been like the most effective way for myself to really learn meditation, because it just forces you to confront yourself.
So let's just say you're in an isolation tank. You're in there, but it's still up to you to get a hold of your thoughts, right? I mean,
yeah.
But it just makes it a lot easier. It makes you more aware of your thoughts. Or talk to us about the benefits of it and what you've noticed.
It's evolving. It's crazy. This is something I haven't really heard people talk about on his podcast anywhere, and any other podcast, is just that how different a session will be one from another. I just did it last night, and I've started to keep a float journal, because I'll have like a wave of inspiration come to me in the first hour or so after I've done like an hour-long session of floating. And I'll just write down these thoughts and impressions, and it's been just, it can be some sessions, sometimes it can get really hard, to be like floating in very dense salt water in complete darkness and complete silence with earplugs in is, it forces you to confront yourself. And I think the one of the first things that I learned was just how loud I am, inside. I just kept telling myself to just shut the hell up, just shut up, quiet, because you get in there and you just and this is a common thing with meditation, right? I mean, a lot of guided meditation, it's all about focus on not focusing on anything, let it all go, maybe focus on your body to but try to not let the onslaught of thoughts, come into your mind, and sometimes these float sessions will turn into just battling that the whole time, just feeling all these, especially when you're a filmmaker. I mean, and you're just freelance, self-employed filmmaker who's doing his own thing, there's a lot to think about, because you're thinking about creative, you're thinking about business, you're thinking about
the next gig,
the
next pitch,
the next paycheck,
yeah. Or if you did a pitch, you were thinking, gosh, did I do that pitch right?
Yeah.
You're thinking
yeah,
about
yeah.
something that's already done, right? That's in the past, which is the whole point of meditation, is to just drop everything and
Yeah, yeah.
be in the moment.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what the sensory deprivation stuff. I mean, it just forces you to do that. You can get a lot of the same benefits just from straight up meditation. For me, it just takes it takes a little bit more concentration, because at least you can let go of your body a little bit more. But that's like there's just I keep finding more and more mental, emotional benefits, but also physical. I'll typically do it at the end of a week when I'm like really sore after a week of doing like the martial arts stuff, and I've recently been getting more and more into CrossFit. Just more weightlifting, things that I never ever did as a kid. And I'll do like one of those an hour long session in the tank and feel, I don't know, like 40 to 50% less sore, after I get out. And I don't know why that is, but it's just like you just feel great, and that I feel like the older I get, the more in tune I become with things that do make you feel great, and that includes food. Like for example, my favorite breakfast right now is just eggs and kimchi.
I love kimchi.
And I love kimchi too. Mm-hmm. Those probiotics. That's from doing that documentary. I just like I do a lot of probiotic whatever, throughout the day. But yeah, that'll just like supercharge me. And that's just something that like works for me and my body. It's not going to work for everybody out there. But like I've just kind of discovered that that's something that's just like makes me feel good, and that's something I can do consistently. Or and even I've also discovered like not eating something or what I've been dabbling in, which is a huge hot topic right now, is intermittent fasting. That's another thing that just like makes me feel good. But you still got to figure out a way to make it work with like your lifestyle. And I think what I love most about that is like when you break a fast, the first thing you put in your body is your body will pretty quickly tell you, how well it's talking to that food.
Indeed.
It's a great way to just figure out what your body reacts to well and what it doesn't. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about all that, and I just love it. I just like I've been thinking about lately is I'm an experience person. I love any and every experience I can kind of get my hands on. I think part of that has to do with leaving a religion that I was raised in and even proselytized for, but experience everything. That's the big part of my motivation for like some kind of a physical transformation is just like I want to experience kite surfing, and that's something that's really difficult to do when you're heavy and obese. I want to experience hang gliding. I want to like things like that. And even like this is weird because I just kind of teamed up with a bit of a nutritionist about kind of the next stage for me, because I'm trying to finish this project that I've been documenting for the past 2 years about this transformation. But I've been trying to make a game plan of like how to make like the next, I've been plateaued for a good year and I'm trying to figure out how to break through that.
And so what is the doctor going to help you do exactly?
I'm doing like a bunch of, this is the other thing too. I think this stems from the documentary maybe, but I love experimenting on myself. That's where the whole like intermittent fasting thing came from. I was like, let's just try this out. Let's try paleo. I love going vegan for a little while because you're vegan, right?
Yep.
And I love just going vegetarian for a while. I've tried bouts of the carnivore diet, which I don't recommend personally. It just didn't work for me. But, it works for some people out there. But speaking of blood work, so today in the mail, I get this new thing that who knows, it could be total bullshit, but it's this thing called Habit, which is a DNA test. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of it?
I have. Yes.
So I'm doing that like this weekend.
Amazing. And that tells you that you drink the shake as well, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So you do a blood test.
Yep.
After a 10-hour fast.
Mm-hmm.
You do the blood test. Before that, you drink their shake. You wait for 2 hours, do the blood test again, and then it's meant to tell you the things that I've been learning myself over the years, like what I mentioned about like if you do an intermittent fast and like first thing you put in your body, you can kind of see how your body's talking to that food and how you're feeling. I mean, this DNA test is all about just showing you, like, genetically speaking, this is what is going to be good for your body. This is the kinds of things you should be focused on eating, you know. And from a metabolism standpoint, it gives you a lot of that kind of information, which is just something I've had to deal with my entire life. Like, I've had the metabolism of a 80-year-old since I was like 10 years old. You know, it's just like, that's what I was dealt, you know, as a kid. It's just a crappy metabolism. I've never been able to like eat whatever I want, you know, never. Yeah. And so this documentary project I'm working on, it's called, right now I'm calling it Fighting Genetics. Because I think what I've discovered, I think a lot of this has to do with, by the way, just being in the film industry, is just the concept of being held accountable. And so I'm just getting this guy to just check in with me like twice a week, because I think we live in a world, you know, in the freelance world especially, we live in a world of deadlines, you know, and projects. You know, project starts here, ends here, deliveries here, you know, and you have a producer that's nagging and and telling you when to deliver things and when to do things, and you know that's been my world for the past like 7 years is like working with these producers and having, you know, productions, you know, like start and end. So anyway, I'm kind of treating my next bout that way. I just realized that's how I've been functioning for a little while. I just need somebody to be the producer and like hold me accountable.
Now I want to go into your morning routine. I could tell you about my morning routine, but I'm really just more so interested in yours. What really interests me about yours is that you're so scientific just about your coffee and the way that you measure your coffee and just the way that you describe it. And if you were able to see A Todd while he's talking about his coffee, he's moving his hands around and his fingers around like a mad scientist. And it just inspires me to drink more coffee. So now I want to know what else he does in the morning. And
that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's it. All right.
I mean, lately it's been like, you know, I do the intermittent fasting thing mostly because like in the morning I feel great with just like, you know, you make your black coffee and maybe have just some water, soda water, not worry about eating for the first half of the day, you know, which I think it's been a great practice and discipline for me. You know, I mean, I think it just gets you into the mindset of like, I don't need to eat, you know, and I definitely don't need to eat just for the sake of mouth pleasure, you know. And I think it, you know, it helps me get into that mindset right off the bat. So that's a big part of it. But yeah, I like making pour over coffee because it's so meticulous, you know. It's like, so like you control every variable. You know, it's all, and it's a little bit like an art, you know. It's like you control the grind size, you control the temperature, and you know, so I start with like whole bean coffee. I grind it, and sometimes I'll play with the grind size based on where the beans are from, and what the roast is. You know, light, medium, or dark. And then you're controlling like the temperature of the water also affects the flavor based on what beans you have and the grind size, and the kind of filter that you put it in is also affected. And then the water to coffee ratio is also all affected into the flavor the outcome that you get from controlling all these variables. But if you can find like the perfect ratios and you remember all these variables, then you can replicate it. You can make it again, you know, like your perfect cup of coffee. You know, so it's like it's a part of my morning, you know. It's just like playing with all these variables and figuring out my perfect cup of coffee for the morning.
That's amazing, and that actually sets up how you live your life. You know, you used to do, or I don't know if you still do it, but you've told me about taking cold showers or just exposing yourself to cold water for breathing methods. Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah. Oh man, yeah, that's an epic podcast. Which one is it? I think it's Joe Rogan. He interviews Wim Hof. And man, interesting dude. The dude like freaking hiked Everest in shorts.
Wow.
And a walking stick.
Wow.
Like that's it, you know, and no tank, you know, and he's got all sorts of crazy stories, but he's also one of the first people that scientifically proved in a laboratory setting that you can lower your body temperature just with breathing techniques. And so it's a really compelling podcast to listen to. It's just listening to him in general. I think he has his own app too that has a whole bunch of like breathing exercises and such. But yeah, and so it was from there I kind of was learning about like the benefit of like turning your shower cold for like 60 seconds or something, like as cold as you can, and using that to force your way into like, like some really intense breathing. And to start your day with that, and just to get your blood flowing through your whole system. Mm-hmm. It's really It's really difficult, but I think that's the other side to it that's pretty incredible. I mean, just to start your day with doing something difficult, is really beneficial.
Absolutely.
I mean, just kind of mentally speaking, itself. I think and it's one of the reasons I really like jujitsu, and martial arts in general, because I've never been an athletic person, but like doing the practice, jiu-jitsu in particular, the practice of like tapping out if somebody's got you in a chokehold or an arm lock, and not letting, bowing down to them, tapping out, and telling them that I give up. It's like a really humbling and important thing to do, I think, as a human being, just to realize that you aren't the center of the universe, and you aren't in control of the situation, so you're tapping out, you're submitting. And anyway, I think that's why the cold showers are it's one of the reasons the cold showers I think are beneficial, because it's hard, it sucks.
I don't know how to say it, because I'm in the film industry, maybe I'm a little bit detached, but I feel like it could be really easy to be an asshole as a director or a producer, or just as one of the top people. And I guess it was easier for the older school people. Nowadays, I don't know. Maybe people are more easily replaceable, to where if you're an asshole too much and you don't offer. Although I don't know, man. I feel like you could be an asshole and still be successful, but you choose to be a nice person, and so maybe you get more success.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big part of the why for me, actually. Just speaking about kind of why filmmaking, why I do what I do, But I think, it's funny, this North Carolina job, this agency job that I just got back from, the one major piece of feedback that I got was they were pleasantly surprised with how easy I was to collaborate with and work with. I think because they had dealt, and they were telling me all sorts of horror stories from past directors that have come in and just want their way and are just complete assholes about it. And that's still a thing. There's plenty of people out there that are just dicks for the sake of being a dick,
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with having a learner mentality, which I know that you have. It's the more open you are to learning, then the less you feel like you know, and the more you feel like you know, the more you don't want to hear other people, and so you could be short and abrupt with people. And
I mean, so that ties into the why for me, because I think like I mentioned earlier, agnosticism kind of has become a big part of how I live now and how I think, and that the kind of an exit, leaving a religion is I mean, I don't know, that's kind of where I've left off without digging too far down or going too far down that rabbit hole. I've just kind of ended up on the other side where I realized I've become a kind of an agnostic humanist, which is just that I think agnosticism is something that would benefit the entire world if people would just kind of have more of that mindset, not just from a religious standpoint, but just from a everything standpoint. Just the practice of saying I don't know is so beneficial, and I don't know something. I don't know if from a spiritual side of things, it's I don't know if there is a God or if there isn't one. I think there's not quite, and and this can be debated for days and days and years, but you can't prove one way or another, so it just seems to me that it just becomes your choice at some point. But at the same time, just being willing to say I don't know something is similar to the submission thing I talked about earlier. The idea of tapping out. It's just that humility is so important, and I think if more people could adopt that kind of mindset, we'd have a much more peaceful world.
Being an independent filmmaker, you have to obviously, to survive, if you don't want to work a 9-to-5 or other kind of jobs, you have to take on client work and do projects for other people. But you're a filmmaker for a reason, and I know you're working on a project, on a feature-length screenplay right now. And that may have the answer of why you're making movies tied into that film, but I'd like to know why did you get into filmmaking, and what is your What's the messages you want to say? Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, a big part of it is a really important, kind of unfortunately important part of my life has been in 2006 when my dad committed suicide. And it was just kind of an earth-shattering experience, and to know and love something or somebody that you have seen go through some pretty troubling times, and for it to end in that way, is pretty earth-shattering. But also, my dad was like one of the most spiritual, religious, and believers in Jesus Christ. One of the strongest believers I ever knew. So, like that experience, I think definitely had something to do with like my eventual kind of like leaving of religion. But it's also become a really incredibly important experience in terms of having something to say, which is the primary reason I've become a filmmaker, which is just to say something to the world, try to provide something to the world, try to leave something behind that is beneficial to humankind. It's the ultimate goal. It's like it's such a flighty sort of artisty kind of objective, right? But it's like that's why you do it, and so over the years I've been just trying to find, and with writing this script that I'm working on right now, I've been trying to fine tune that side of my craft, I guess, which is just to learn how to say something worthwhile, And I think like the benefit of like all this commercial work I've been doing is learning a lot of really incredibly important vocabulary as far as like how to say things efficiently and well, like how to visually tell a story, how to compose a shot that tells a story in the quickest, shortest amount of time without just saying it, with dialogue, that whole like show don't tell thing about storytelling. And I say that as if, I don't know who's going to listen to this, but that's one of the things that we kind of like, it's screenplay 101, right? It's just like the show don't tell thing. But, commercial world is incredibly beneficial in just practicing that over and over and over again, so, the game plan for me is I have made like a feature film, but it was a lot like client work. It was somebody else's script. I'm trying to communicate somebody else's message, and message is a loose term in terms of those movies. But, and all that can be beneficial because it's like the commercial thing. Like I said, you're learning other skills along the way, a lot of really beneficial skills as a filmmaker. And so I feel like with every commercial I make, I'm like learning new things that I can bring into the feature filmmaking world or even my screenplay writing world. And it's making me a little bit like slow about it, about making this movie, because I'm just like, oh man, I'm learning so much right now as a commercial film director that like, do I keep learning for another year or two before I make this thing, because it'll just keep getting stronger, Yeah. But at the same time, I've got something to say, and I want to say it, and I think with a lot of conversations I've had with people about religion or about a faith transition, which is an important part of the story, and an important part of my story, and about suicide. Like the more I want to tell that story, because like the more I realize it connects to a lot of people. Totally. And so that's the goal, just to eventually make a movie that can entertain, sell. That's an important side of it, but also touch, and hopefully benefit a lot of people. So that would be the ultimate objective, and messaging wise, I think like, I want to make a movie that promotes just the concept of agnosticism a little bit more, just to, if somebody can leave a movie kind of going, oh, I should say I don't know more, or I should, ask more questions, or, maybe I should have a difficult conversation with my religious mom, or on the flip side, if a very religious, spiritual person goes to see a movie, is it possible to make a movie that talks to both sides of the fence? Can you get those two people to talk to each other and have a productive conversation without any strong hatred or emotion otherwise about the subject? That's another goal. It's all like big, lofty, huge goals, but at the same time, I'm learning how to do it well, hopefully, with all this commercial stuff, and we'll see where it goes, man. It's another experiment.
I believe in you, A Todd. I think, maybe just 2 more questions.
Yeah.
These are hypothetical questions, of course. But if you could go back 10 years and say something to yourself, what would it be?
Okay, yeah. If I could go back 10 years. That reminds me of some quote. I'm trying to remember who it was. I could look it up and do some fact checking, but it has something to do with probably wouldn't tell myself anything different because I wouldn't know any better. What I know now is because of the life experiences that I've had, and I'm not sure I'd want to change that, because you have to live and you have to experience to learn lessons. Even people listening to this, it's like hopefully what we've talked about could be a benefit to somebody, but at the end of the day, it's like you've kind of like to really learn the lessons. You got to go after it yourself. You got to experience it yourself, and experience is definitely the best teacher, and I think it's not only one of the most important sides of the filmmaking process too. Turns out, experience is so important in our field, and
totally
one thing leads to the next. So anyway, but that's kind of a non-answer, I guess.
That's a great answer. It's probably the most right answer there is. If you have something that you would tell yourself in the past, that means you're not really, enjoying the moment, and you're thinking about something you wish you could do differently. So in a way, it says a lot about you as well,
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
You're an astute individual. But is there a question you wish people would ask you that you could talk about, something deep down that, you want to talk about, but people don't ask the question enough? Or what is that question? You can.
Well, I don't know. And one that we could talk for another hour about is the why. I think that's really interesting. I think I'm not sure that's asked enough to filmmakers in particular. Why did you decide to make it? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your message? If you have a specific project, you're typically talking about the message, but I don't know, the why is a really interesting thing. It's just kind of gets me thinking about, gets you thinking about what motivates you,
Totally.
Because the why is ultimately what motivates you. That's something I've also thought a lot about, with people in your life that maybe seem less motivated than you, or, how it goes as a director. Your job is to sometimes motivate people, the crew, or in particular the actors, motivate them to give their best performance and want to give their best performance. Sometimes you run into people that don't have that motivation. They don't have that self-drive. And I don't know, that gets me thinking about, why is that? Where does all this passion and motivation come from that I've got boiling up inside me? I don't get asked that very often, like you've asked, about those reasons, what motivates you, so I think that could get asked more, but yeah, I don't know.
All right, in closing, hey Todd, where can people find you? Where can people see what you're doing?
I guess the place I'm most active these days is Instagram, and that's kind of semi-active. Instagram is atodd_director. And then otherwise, atodd.com is my website. And so I try to keep my portfolio up there, or Atodd Belpond on YouTube. And, I'm trying to post stuff. What YouTube has become for me nowadays, by the way, is just, it's a place to experiment. More about this whole idea of experimenting with your own life, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. I like to do the same thing in the film world, because I don't know everything about filmmaking, but I do want to try to make what I'm interested in. So that's a place, I made this crazy, couple of years, I guess it's been a couple of years now. I just made for fun this Deadpool video.
I saw it. I loved it.
It's just ridiculous. It's like, it was another one of those, let's tap into Deadpool and Candy Crush.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, it's like keeps it kind of blowing up right now.
Oh, wow.
2 years later.
Amazing.
It's weird. But that was like a place for me, like, all these Marvel movies coming out is kind of going, what can I do close to that, just with no budget, just with me and a camera, me and a movie, and I experimented and put it out there, and incidentally, that led to me getting a manager, and an LA manager that now represents my whole commercial career, so it's like, you never know where stuff is going to lead.
Yep.
So I don't know. I like using YouTube as a way just to practice, just to practice things, different techniques that I'm thinking about or studying about from past directors. I think I told you a little while back, I'm like kind of obsessed right now with film history and trying to learn about past directors and what old directors were doing that was groundbreaking for their time. And trying some of those things out, whether it's like how you're working with actors or where you're putting the camera or camera movement versus no camera movement, like really kind of nitty gritty sides of the directing craft, like YouTube's the place to try it out, because YouTube is a place where you can fail and it just does not matter. Years and years and years ago, I saw these commercials that were shot with these probe lenses, and it conjured up that like inner young side of young A Todd, who's like going, how did they make this? And then I went and researched like how they shot this thing, and it was with those probe lenses. And that's what made me go, I want to shoot on those probe lenses, So then I came up with a project that gave us an excuse to fly out these probe lenses from LA, and try to do some of the same stuff, So.
Amazing. I actually had written on my notes, dipping $100,000 lens in guacamole. And that's the probe lens. Is there anything else you want to leave us with that I can impart onto people?
Keep questioning. You don't know everything out there, people.
Amazing. And when A Todd hashtags things, there's usually always the hashtag white belt mentality.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is something that I've started to incorporate in my own life as well, inspired by A Todd.
So there you have it. Episode 1 with Mr. A. Todd Smith. And you can find out more about A. Todd by visiting his website at www.atodd.com. And once again, this is AVANT-SAVANT. I am your host, Sohrab Mirmont. If you like this, please leave a comment or a thumbs up or subscribe. And if you want to interact with us, then you can go to our website, avant-savant.com, or find us on social media. Make sure you're tuned in and subscribe.
Just